come and have breakfast. So I will say that to you after church, but I will say come and have dinner. So you're all invited. Most of you are staying, I know, because my wife made it special for us. So come and have breakfast. You know, in a very healthy life, in a life that I believe God calls us to, one thing I know for certain is that we balance work and love and rest. We balance those things. And I think it's a life truth. I think it's a spiritual truth as well as just a general life truth. I think it's a truth for our well-being. That Jesus of Nazareth is telling those who will listen that we do best and we live healthiest when we are connected. We're healthiest when we're connected to ourselves, when we're connected to our God. We're healthiest when we're connected to our work, to our love, to our play, to our rest. We're healthiest when we are connected to one another as humans. I believe firmly that as important as the spiritual things Jesus is saying in today's passage, he is giving us good advice. It's always best to balance in our lives work and love and rest. In my opinion, it helps to add play. And in my opinion, it helps to add pray. But everything in balance. So we all heard this passage that I just read to you so eloquently. But we all hear it differently. We hear in it a story about a leader named Jesus and his disciples, or we hear at least a story about a leader and the workers who follow him, his disciple workers. Now, most of us in this room and on Zoom, most of us see in this passage our God in human form, our God who we see to be supremely powerful, a supremely powerful God who has rather counterintuitively, I might add, allowed himself, first of all, to become a human being, and even more counterintuitively, has allowed himself to be killed by other humans. Ironically enough, killed by the humans who he came to redeem, who he came to transform. He came to rescue us basically from ourselves. And so in that appreciation of the story, you and I get to fold this oxymoronic understanding about Jesus into what we think a God of love is, even into what we think our definition of love is. We have to fold this in. A God who loves their creation so much, they become vulnerable to us to be close to us in hopes of saving us from ourselves so that we can better connect to God, to ourselves, to each other, and to the work we do in this world. Now, whether or not we hold to that spiritual translation, I think we can safely say that in the disciples we see today particularly workers of the land and workers of the sea. Today we see disciples who are clearly fishermen. And I say men because all of them on the boat were men. We see workers who earn their living, breaking their backs to provide a service to the larger community. So in that same disciples as workers vein, then we see this kind, deeply caring leader of these workers telling them a few things about life. So in my opinion, like a boss, awesome sauce boss. Y'all can't say that 3 times fast. Like a boss, awesome sauce boss. Jesus tells them, work together, work in unity, and focus your efforts here on this particular place at this particular time. And he tells them, enjoy the fruits of your own labor. And don't work all the time. Rest and recreate and recreate and build community with each other. Now, if you don't think he said all that, I will proceed to make my point. Jesus says, and you remember this, cast the net to the right side of the boat and you will find some fish there. Now, I take that as the sign of a deeply caring leader telling his workers, here is where your efforts are best spent. Work together, work united in this one spot for the very best catch. And let's be honest, he was right. And then he tells them, and partake of the fruits of your labor. Now that may sound funny to us, but I'll unpack that for you. He says, bring some of the fish that you've just caught. So take a little off the top, off the results of your hard work. Take this little 4% of your proceeds, because that's for your benefit. That is not for the benefit of those who haven't worked for this fish. In saying that, he says, be connected to each other, be connected to your work, and be connected to the fruits of your own labors. And in that move, I think he also assisted them, making sure they had the tools that they needed for their work. Because you remember it said, so Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net ashore, full of large fish, 153 of them. And though there were so many, the net was not torn. Now, that might have just been good luck. I don't know nothing about nets. I don't know that much about fish. That may have been luck. But I kind of like the idea that maybe earlier in the day or the previous day, Jesus had seen to it that the nets they were using, knowing that tomorrow they're going to get a big catch, I like the idea that maybe he had some of the other workers who weren't fishers reinforce, stitch the nets so that they could all benefit from this really large haul. Otherwise, they would have just sat helplessly and watched as the net broke and their efforts swam safely back to sea. So you don't have to buy that, but I kind of like that version of the story, that he made sure they had the tools they needed. He saw to it that they collaborated. He reminded us that we need each other. And then he said, come and have breakfast. Now, I don't usually have fish for breakfast. What are you going to do? It's Jesus. He said, come and have breakfast. And so he told them, take a break. And he didn't tell them take a 15-minute break. It was more like that hour break that you get at lunch, or even longer. Before you do anything else, he said, enjoy the fruits of your own labor first. And I think the cool thing about that was this. He was inviting the workers to do the right thing, the just thing, take in your own proceeds. You have worked hard for them. He invited them to do the right thing, even though it was breaking the law. They were breaking the law, eating the fish they had just caught. I know this. I learned it in seminary. And Reverend Matt agrees. So I really know it's true. Because under the oppressive governance of the Roman Empire, workers got none of the spoils of their own efforts. Now, this has some important throwbacks to Old Testament times as well, but we won't get into that. The point is this: workers got none of the spoils under the Roman occupation, none of the spoils of their own efforts. Fishers did not get fish. Pot makers didn't get pots. The taxation on their goods that they worked for was inhuman, and it was exorbitant. What the laborers had to pay this invading army, these parasitic Roman occupiers, for the so-called privilege of being allowed the dignity of work, what they owed was so extreme. Workers couldn't afford a break during the day. They couldn't afford to stop giving 100% all of the time. They couldn't afford a day off. There were no unions yet. There wasn't a weekend and a dinner break. And under Roman occupation law, it was illegal for the workers to keep for themselves any of what they had caught. So in many ways, your entire family had to support the work you did as a laborer under the Roman occupation. And so here's this Jesus character who, by Roman standards and by even the religious standards of the day, because they had been corrupted by the occupation, here's this Jesus who they just saw as a rabble-rouser. And here he is telling them, work together. Here's the best use of your talent and your energy. Come, take a break. Don't work so hard. Eat a little bit of what you have. Maybe take some home in a takeout box to your family. Did they have takeout boxes back then, Steve? Let us rest, he says. Let's replenish. Let's not worry right now about those exorbitant taxes and fees that have been put upon us by those just because they have power and who have worked up no sweat. Because for us to do this now for ourselves is the just and kind thing to do. I think we need not forget the wonderful thing about gathering, about resting, about replenishing. It's really rewarding, and it's community building. We get better when we are together. We get stronger when we gather together. See, I don't know about you, but I'm convinced that a righteous leader like Jesus doesn't overwork the workers. I'm convinced that a righteous leader doesn't try and divide and conquer or isolate the workers like the Roman occupation did. I'm convinced that a righteous leader desires a very deep and very meaningful relationship with the people who he or she works with. Something like that thing called an I-thou relationship. The I-thou relationship, that's a relationship of deep reciprocal commitment. I-thou, I-thou, I-you. I'm convinced that a righteous leader like Jesus of Nazareth doesn't tell the workers who are underpaid, overworked, and at times demoralized. I'm convinced he does not tell them, your conditions don't need improving. Yes, you are workers, you're disciples and workers, but you're my disciples first and workers second. No, the righteous, loving leader like Jesus of Nazareth, who I believe is both fully human and fully divine, I believe that he sees the people whom he loves. And I believe that a good and righteous leader like Jesus serves the people whom he loves. And he seeks to make us whole in our entirety, for all of who we are, for every job we do, even with all of our flaws. He seeks to love us and to lead us, to build our unity and make us whole. Like a boss, awesome sauce boss, Jesus tells them, and he tells us, work together. Focus your efforts. Enjoy the fruits of your labor. And rest, and recreate, and recreate, and build community with each other, because it's you together who make this world go around. It is you who need one another. Do all of this to connect more with your God, connect more with your work, and connect more with yourselves. Connect with each other. Pray with me. Jesus Christ, Son of the living God, save us for heaven's sake, and for the planet's sake, make us worth saving. Amen.